What we have, Charlie, is this is called J-term for us. We started it last year, and we do it for a week and a half when we first come back from Christmas break, and we choose one topic, and the students choose what they want to do, and then we go to that topic all day for a week and a half. So we don't have math and science and PE. We just have the one topic all day, and we chose wilderness survival.
Excellent.
So far we've had we made our own knives. I'm the shop teacher, so we made our own knives, and we're not quite done with them. We're doing it a little bit at a time, and we've gone out. We've started fire. We've made some shelters, and tomorrow we're going to spend half a day out in the woods, and then Friday we're going to spend all day out there.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, shop was actually one of my favorite classes in high school.
Good.
And actually, of all the classes I took, I think shop probably had the longest and most widespread impact on everything I can do because it helped me be more mechanically inclined. So learn to work with your hands, because I'll tell you what, there was just an article that came out that said 2 in 5 adults now can't fix a single thing around the house without referring to Google.
Really?
And that's a sad shame.
Yeah. Yeah, people with skills, they'll be able to write their own check, basically.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, skilled people around here are making 6 figures.
Really?
Yep.
And absolutely. Are you in Florida, Charlie?
I'm in North Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, our main office is down in Florida, down in Gainesville, and I moved up from Palm Beach, Florida a couple of years ago to the mountains here, so.
Okay.
Yeah, where are you guys located?
We're in southeast Iowa.
Okay.
So we don't have a whole lot of woods around. We just have little patches here and there. We have some state parks we're going to go to, but we've been just going out to a little creek area that's got some trees around it.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have big
you got a lot of flatter land out there then, right?
We do. A lot of cornfields, a lot of bean fields.
All right.
Yeah. Well, we're waiting on another group, but I think we'll go ahead and start. We have a number of questions, but before we get to those, could you tell us a little bit about your background in survival and how you got into it?
Sure. Years ago, before I went into high school, I always knew I wanted to be in the Army. I loved running through the woods, pretty much hurting each other. And before we had paintball, we used BBs and pellets, the old days. And, luckily we didn't majorly maim anybody, but we survived that. So I joined the Army as a scout. So I was a reconnaissance scout. Spent over 15 years in the U.S. Army, been all over the place, all over Europe, been down to Central America, jungle survival school, participated in the radiological survey when Chernobyl exploded, been deployed to a number of hurricanes like Hurricane Andrew, a whole bunch of those down from South Florida that really destroyed communities like flat, and where there was no authority, it was anarchy. From the military, I got into construction, and started doing gas work, propane work, natural gas, building construction, and collected a series of certified licenses. So I'm a general contractor, underground contractor, plumbing contractor, got into project management, got into be a manager with Bell Canada, with division of them, doing infrastructure work, heavy infrastructure. Then the crash came, the Great Recession happened, and construction just stopped. So that gave me the opportunity to do something I wanted to do, which is get a little bit more prepared because of all the stuff that I had seen happening all over the world. For example, when Chernobyl happened, we could not eat any of the food in Europe. All of our food as U.S. troops had to be put on a boat and floated to Europe, and then we were rationed how much meat we could have. So these are real world things that happen. We couldn't drink the milk because the cows were radiated. Couldn't eat the produce because the fallout had landed on all the crops. So you start realizing, well, how can I improve? And that got me a little bit more into preparedness. Came back to Florida where I lived and got hit by every hurricane coming across the ocean. Said, wow, we got to figure out how we can survive this now. and just started preparing a little bit better. And then realized that all survival is physiological. It always starts that way. So started realizing that the Maslow's triangle, the hierarchy of needs, if you guys are familiar with any of that, I would check that out. That physiological survival is at the bottom, the most important. So, for example, at the bottom is breathing and, staying above room temperature. At the top, you have things like belonging and feeling and love and all that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you, when you're drowning or starving, feeling like you want a hug is probably not at the top of your list. It's about getting air and food. So that's why I started reinforcing my survival skills. And then started a company called Personal Readiness Education Programs at readygoprep.com, and started teaching classes, started learning everything I can, and realized that by learning a new task, then I could teach it to somebody, and then by teaching it to somebody, I learned it better. And I was, so there's a difference between just reading something in a book and putting your hands on it and doing it. And it's even more different when you try to teach somebody else how to do it, because then you realize how much you don't know. So I started improving on that. Then I started writing books. So I wrote the Survival Group Handbook. I wrote Strategic Relocation Book, Prepper Survival Retreats. And now I've gotten into fiction books. I believe you guys had a conversation with Chris Weatherman, Angry American, before.
Yep.
He's a buddy of mine. All those guys, they're all friends of mine. And so now I get to hang out with some really cool people, travel around the country, do things like this. And now I'm a certified drone pilot, so I can use drones for three-dimensional orthomosaic mapping on properties when I do security assessments and photography and video work. I was just up in Tennessee teaching a bug-out class in the cold on New Year's Eve, and took my drone up there and did some aerial video for our Survival Dispatch website. So it's a fun industry, and you get to do a lot of stuff, meet a lot of cool people, and along the way, I am much more prepared, much more comfortable, and now I pay attention to everything that goes on in the world. And if something goes wrong, I'm already prepared for it. And the thing with what's going on in Iran right now, what you can't see on this right here is I've got a large 27-inch screen right here. I've got 4 more 24-inch wraparound screens around me that is just blaring me with constant. What I have is automated Twitter feeds for intel information, because I'm an intel analyst with Forward Observer. So we pick up information, do open source intelligence, signals intelligence, information intelligence. So, and then all of the other stuff that we do. And now that you've got me, I'm the chief editor, Survival Dispatch Insider Magazine. So I run the whole magazine. So you guys check that out. Go to survivaldispatchinsider.com. And you'll see that there's magazines there with it's all PDF now. It's all digital, so you can download those kind of things, look at them, see what we got going on. Maybe you'll find something interesting in there. So that's the short version of my resume, minus all the emergency management stuff that I'm doing. Plus, I'm getting ready to take a volunteer firefighter training, so I'll be a firefighter too. So that's pretty cool.
Very good. I also am a volunteer firefighter. It was a neat thing to start, and then just to get back to the community. And now I found I really enjoy doing it. So I'm sure you'll get the bug too. And
yeah, I already teach the emergency management classes to all our civilians here through our fire department. So I might as well just go ahead and go the rest of the way.
Absolutely.
And do it. So.
Yeah. Well, we will go ahead and we'll start with the questions. We have 3 different groups, and they have each assigned questions. So we'll have group 1, and then group 2, and I think I saw group 3 walked in on Merrick's screen, so they'll probably be combined.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Group 1, Cheat, why don't you go ahead and ask your first question? Okay, I'll go ahead and ask the first question then. What considerations do you have when you think about choosing a campsite? What are the things that run through your mind, and what is at like the top of the list, and what is just kind of nice to have when you choose a campsite out in the wilderness?
All right, so let me clarify. Is this a campsite just because you want to go camping, or is this a campsite because something's happened and you need to escape off into the woods all Red Dawn-like?
Yeah, so you have your backpack of supplies, and you need to stay out there for, we'll say, anywhere from 1 to 5 days. And it's not you and the family camping, it's you're on the move, but you got to stay somewhere for a little bit.
Okay, so the first thing that you always want to consider in everything that you do in wilderness survival or anything is security. So you want to find yourself a place that is safe and secure away from whatever the threats or hazards are. Now, threats and hazards can be two different things. A hazard could be a tree that might fall on your head, so you want to look around and look up and make sure that your campsite's not underneath a tree that could fall on you, or a big branch that could fall out of a tree. That's called a widowmaker. So we want to make sure that nothing's going to fall on our head, so that could be a hazard. Another hazard could be with the wildlife. Are you next to the water or somewhere where a lot of wild game goes to get their food and water? If you are, that could be a problem for you. So you don't want to put yourself in somebody else's territory that way. A threat could be human. So anything that could attack you, or a human person that could see you, something along that line. So if you want to stay hidden and camouflaged, pull yourself up into the brush, stay further away from the water where the animals aren't going to be right on top of you, and just essentially make sure that your campsite is not going to flood. Make sure you're not in a flash flood area. Make sure you're not in an area where that is not level, because you can't really sleep when you're laying on a hill. And make sure that you're not in an area that, if you build a fire, is going to start a wildfire and burn, thousands of acres. So it's all about safety and security, and give you space to put up your shelter. So those are the basics of what you would want to do.
Okay, great. So, Merrick, your group, do you have a question you can ask?
What has been the worst survival situation you've ever been in?
Jeez, the worst one? There's been a couple of them. There's been a couple of things I might say in Panama, doing a land navigation course, getting turned around in the jungle and having to find our way out. And that way out turned out going on for quite a while and being about neck deep in water as the tides were coming in off the Panama Canal, with snakes and everything else in the water down there, floating patches of ants, things like that. I would say that I've had some pretty cold weather events where you get out there and you can't make fires, where your fingers are frozen. All the tasks that you think that you can do are much more difficult when you're cold or hungry. So there's been a couple of cold ones. There's been a couple of wet ones. There's been been a couple of scuba diving things, getting hung up at an underwater shipwrecks. Trying to find your way out of that, because you're very definitely under a time limit there to get out safely. So I would say that there's a couple of them that rival each other there.
Yeah, those sound like some dicey situations on some of those.
They can be. And the thing is they pop up all of a sudden. 1 minute everything is fine, the next minute it's not. And if you're not prepared for what can go wrong, you don't give yourself any options for when they do go wrong.
Right. All right, which group has question number 3?
We do. So, what is the strangest survival structure you have made in the wild?
The strangest structure. I would say that I'll give you 2. One is a debris hut, which is basically making a shelter out of sticks, leaves, palm fronds, things like that. It takes hours to do, and if you don't need to do it, don't do it, because unless you plan on staying at that place for a long time. And then once you crawl in, the key with those is to have them so small that that there's no extra space in there. That helps to retain your body temperature. The second one, believe it or not, I would say a cotton bed sheet. you can use a white, or it doesn't matter what color it is, but a regular cotton sheet, like off your bed, make a stick frame, and turn that into a pup tent, and even in the rain, you will stay dry outside. Unless, when it's raining, you touch the inside of the sheet over where your buddy's sleeping, and then it'll drip in that spot. And your buddy will be like, what's going on? Why am I getting wet here? So, but believe it or not, yeah, a regular sheet can actually make a good shelter for you.
Very good. So question number 4, which group has that?
We do, but it's crossed out.
Okay, somebody else has it then.
I guess we'd have it then. What is the strangest thing you've ever eaten in the wild?
Let's see. Yikes. That's, aside from MREs, I would say, well, probably pig. We actually, wild pig, we were down in the Everglades doing an advanced swamp survival class and killed a live pig and sat there and butchered it with our bare hands in the dark under swarms of mosquitoes. And what we did is we cut the meat up, in piles, and then we built our own smoker out of a tripod of sticks and put a survival blanket around the smoker, made a fire underneath it, and smoked the meat that way. And we had smoked pork, basically a smoked pork jerky, and that was it. And the problem and the reason that was wild was, one, I tried to catch a lizard earlier and tried to save it, and it escaped out of my pocket because I didn't want to kill it, because foods always lasts longer when it's still alive. We call that nature's refrigerator. But it got away, so I was pretty depressed there, so I didn't get to eat my lizard. But that was what we call a deprivation survival training. So that means you go out there, you don't get to bring any water with you, you don't get to bring any food with you. You have to make your own water out of the swamp water and try not to get sick. And when you don't eat for a couple of days, and then all of a sudden you do eat, it'll trash your system and it'll make you sick. So we ate a handful of rice that we cooked in a bamboo pipe, essentially, over a fire, and then we had a little bit of pork jerky, and then we all got sick, and then we had to go out and do land navigation. So that was pretty nasty.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun being sick like that after being without for so long.
Yep, and bugs, of course. Eating bugs, etymophagy. You can find the right kind of bugs, and you can eat those. Crickets are good on a stick over a fire. Crunchy.
So, question number 5, who has that?
How long have you stayed out in the wild continuously?
I would say a couple of weeks at a time. Yeah, a couple of weeks. Just to go out and see what we could do. Some of those were military missions where it's a mix of you're working, but you're also staying out there. So, for example, in Central America, when we were out running missions, we would stay out for a week or two at a time, and it was always wet all the time during monsoon season. So your clothes start to create an algae slime, and it rots the stitches out of them. That's, you start learning about things about keeping your feet dry as much as possible, and camp hygiene is really, really important when you do that kind of thing.
Interesting. Question number 6.
Okay. What is your favorite place or climate to do wilderness survival?
Oh, that's a good question. My favorite one or the most challenging one? I kind of like the jungle environment, because the jungle is away from everybody. It's really cool. It's amazing what you see out there when you're sitting there minding your own business, and dozens of monkeys come screaming over your head through the trees. That'll get your attention. Where monkeys come in and try to take your stuff and run off with it. So you got to have everything picked up. You got to keep your sight clean and all your stuff tied down. So I like the jungle environment, but I kind of still like the snow environment too, because it's completely different. And then you can really challenge yourself to make snow shelters, igloo kind of shelters, things like that.
All right, number 7. Question number 7.
What are your top 3 items for wilderness survival?
Top 3 items. So there's the best thing that you can do is not find yourself in the woods without things that you can't make. That means it's really hard to make a knife in the wild, so it's best to take one with you. So take a good knife, one that's got a solid, what we call a full tang handle, one that won't break, a nice thick one. Depends on your terrain. So for in the tropical areas, we carry big Rambo knives. We go up into, Midwest, we might take smaller bushcraft knives. So something like that. I don't have one sitting here in front of me. Everything else I have here is combat stuff. I would say a knife is critical. A way to make fire, absolutely critical. So everybody seems to want to go straight to rubbing sticks together. You never want to rub sticks together if you don't have to. It's hard. You can blister up your hands. You can get yourself injured doing it. Take a lighter with you. If you take a big lighter with you and you wrap that thing in Gorilla Tape, then wrap some jute twine around it, which is like a manila twine. That will keep the trigger from depressing and wasting all your fuel. And you can use the twine as a kind of a tinder to get your fire started, and then put a single-edged razor blade or a small knife in the tape. That gives you a whole survival kit all in one little thing. So take a way to make a fire. Ferrocerium rods are awesome. That can also work as long as you get a good, thick, a big one and a way to strike it. A container is a great thing to have when you go out to the woods. So there's something called the 10 C's, which a combustion tool, a cutting tool, a container tool, a compass, things like that are all hard to make when you're out in the field. Those are the kind of things that I would definitely not want to show up in the woods without. And definitely a compass, because even on the trails that you're very familiar with, if it gets dark, you can lose your way, make yourself really lost.
Makes sense. So number 8, question number 8.
How do you keep calm when you find yourself in like a survival situation?
That's a great question. So the best thing that I've learned, and I can guarantee you will work, is you've got to get your emotions under control. And the way to get your emotions under control is to face the problem. So let's say everything is fine. You're hiking, it's all good. Now you get lost on the trail and you start to say, oh, I'm good. And the next thing you know, I'm not good. And I start to worry. And when you start to worry, then you make bad decisions. And then when you make bad decisions, then you can get injured. Now maybe you twist your ankle. Maybe you break a leg. Maybe you roll down a hill and injure yourself. And you got to stop what you're doing, everything you're doing, sit there and say, all right, where am I? What's going on? And let me say, I need to accept my new reality. And no matter what you're doing, whether it's survival or you're just having a bad day at school, you can say, I need to accept my new reality. And you just say it out loud, because it's like having a conversation with yourself. And once you do that, it will change your entire mindset. And now you'll say, forget about what happened 10 minutes ago. This is what's happening now. This is what's going to affect me now. How do I make my way out of this? Don't run off all crazy and just start panicking, because you'll make those bad decisions and make it worse. Stop, take a breath, take 15 seconds, and look at it and say, okay, what do I need to do here? Well, I know that, first of all, am I safe? Are the people that are with me safe? Now what do we need? Let's develop a plan. How do we get out of here? How do we call for help? How do we do these things? And hopefully you've already trained on some of your skills or studied up on some of these things, so that when you ask yourself, how do I do this? You have an answer. If you ask yourself, how do I do something, and you don't have an answer, now you've got to improvise. So improvise your way out and apply a very simple problem-solving routine. Identify the problem. All right, what's my problem? Well, I got a broken ankle. All right, what's my possible solution? Give me 3 or 4 possible solutions. So you guys tell me. If I had a twisted ankle and I was all by myself out in the woods, give me 3 things that I could try to do to fix that ankle. What do you guys think?
Make a splint.
All right, excellent. Let's splint it up. So let's do what we call immobilize the injury so we don't make it worse, right? What else could I do? How about we make a crutch to help us walk, right? All right, so that's 2 solutions right there. So what if it's broken really bad and the bone is sticking out? Is a crutch going to help me a lot? I probably don't want to walk on it if that's the case. So did I tell somebody where I was going when I left, and that if I don't show up tonight, they'll come out looking for me? Hopefully I did that, right? So so identify your problem, try a couple of solutions, and then try it. And if the solution's not working, try another one. And then keep repeating those 2 things until you find something that does work, until you can self-rescue. Or you can get somebody else's attention and call for rescue. Use your cell phone. Use a flare. Make a fire. Crawl yourself out to an opening and wave something bright. So those are the kind of things that you can think about to get your mind right and help self-rescue.
Great. Question number 9.
What is the number 1 thing people should know for wilderness survival?
Going back to where we started, all survival is physiological. That means that we have to stay alive. That means we have to stay warm, we have to stay breathing, we have to stay hydrated. So if you find that you're going out into the wilderness, always be prepared to be lost and keep yourself found. If you find yourself lost, then stop what you're doing. Think about what you're doing. Don't just wander off, and maybe you can backtrack your way out. So it's all about preparedness and mindset. Take what you need to stay the night, even if you're only going to be hiking for a couple of hours. That's what I would say is a good start.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Question number 10.
What are ways to find food in the wild?
Okay, so the ways to find food in the wild, there's a couple of things. In survival, we like to use the phrase chase the slow food. So because there's a thing called calories in and calories out. And then there's calories, calories are like money. When you find yourself hungry, if you got to spend too many calories to catch your food, you're going to starve to death. So it's kind of hard to kill a deer while you're lost and you don't have any way to do that. So it's better to understand what plants you can eat, understand what bugs you can eat, understand how to build a snare or a deadfall trap, things like that you can set out and let do the work for you. If you know how to build some traps, you know how to build some snares, or take some pre-made snares, which is a lot easier, honestly, with you, then you can set those kind of things out and let them all work for you. One person hunting is one person hunting. One person that puts out 10 traps and snares is 10 people hunting. You see how that works? So chase the slow food. Learn what plants you can eat. Don't eat mushrooms unless you're positive which ones they are. Don't eat berries just because they're blue or red or something like that. Pick up a book. We just did actually in January, we are releasing a foraging issue at Survival Dispatch Insider. That'll be our next magazine issue that we're finishing up. And that'll talk about how to identify plants and some resources to do that.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. Question number 11.
How many people you recommend to take with you on like a survival trip?
Well, I mean, you could take as many as you like. Groups seem to work well when they're in teams of maybe 5 to 8 people. We call that span of control. That's something that firefighters and military use. What that means is one person can kind of control anywhere from 5 to 8 people. Once you get more than that per leader, then there's too much going on and one person can't really keep control of it. So you can take more, but you've got to be more organized and have a little bit more leadership and make sure everybody's paying attention. but at least 3 or 4 if you're just going to go out for a hike. Because if something happens to one, then one could stay with the injured person, and then 1 or 2 could go for help. So that's kind of the minimum I'd like to say.
That's good to know. Number 12 kind of goes back to our number 10 question, but number 12, go ahead and ask that question, gentlemen.
How do you tell what mushrooms are good to eat or not?
That is very difficult because there are literally hundreds and hundreds of variety of mushroom. If you don't know what it is, I wouldn't eat it because mushrooms can make you very, very sick. So if you know what a morel is, then that's fine. You can collect them. If you know what a truffle is, that's fine. You can collect them. You know, those kind of things. But if you don't, there are just a lot of other things that you can eat. There's a rule, like, for example, pretty much any meat is edible. Not every plant is edible. Grass is edible, but it's kind of hard to digest. So learn your plants and focus on other things than mushrooms if you can, because mushrooms are not going to give you all that much anyway, as far as what they call being satiated.
All right. Question number 13.
Cheap or expensive gear, what is fine to save money on, and what should you spend the cash to get the good stuff?
If it has to do with your life survival, spend a couple bucks on it. I mean, get the better stuff. So, for example, a compass, I would get a good, like a Sunto compass. So you might spend $25 or $40 on a compass. You can get those little dollar bubble compasses, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you want to check it, make sure it works before you leave, and understand how to use it. I've had people save their own lives by just having a little $1 compass in their pocket because they found the general direction. So I would say get a good compass. I would say get a nice quality knife. You can get a great survival knife. You don't need to spend $200 on one. You can get anything that is going to be durable, that's not going to break when you try to pry something with it. You can go down to an Army surplus store and pick up just a straight knife, not a folding knife, and get a good sheath that goes with it. Mora knives are pretty good. They're only 10, 15, 20 bucks for a Mora knife. You're not going to go prying anything with it, but it'll hold you over. So something along those lines is pretty handy. I would say also good clothing. I would definitely spend some money on my shoes, my hiking boots. So my hiking boots cost me, about $250 a pair. You can get some a lot cheaper than that, but if your shoes fail when you go out walking on uneven terrain and the sole peels off, that's going to be a problem. If you get blisters on your feet because you use some really cheap Kmart shoes, then you got blisters. Now you're going to have to make it hard to get back. So then you got to start thinking about, how do I treat blisters? Which, by the way, KT tape works really well for that. That kinesio tape that athletes wear. You can just put that on your feet, or get some blister packs. So I would say if your life depends on it, then I would spend a little bit more money on it. But you don't have to spend a lot of money on a Bic lighter to take out to the woods. You don't have to spend a lot of money on a ferrocerium rod, fire steel rod, because, I can get one of those for, 10, 20 bucks.
Right.
Just put your kit together.
Yeah. So what brand of boots do you like then? What do you wear?
I'm wearing the Rocky S2V. So Rocky boots, they come in different types. The ones I'm wearing right now are the Predator version. They're a little bit more for the warmer weather. I've also got a Gore-Tex version, but both of them have vents that are drilled through the sides of the boots. So when I walk in water, and you will walk in water, it drains back out, and you can walk your feet dry. If you are in an area that's got a lot of standing water, and you have Gore-Tex boots without drains, and the water goes inside your boot, it's not going to drain back out. You're going to be walking in bowls of water, and that's going to tear up your feet. And then I would say definitely never, ever, ever wear cotton socks. Never wear cotton anything out to the woods, actually. Cotton socks will tear your feet apart. They don't dry. They don't hold up. They fall all over the place. I like the Fox River military anti-fatigue socks. They go up a little higher over your calf, allow you to walk longer distances, and they work really good with some boot padding. I'm also getting ready to pick up a set of Solomon hiking shoes. They're a little expensive, though. I'm looking at about $130 to $150 a pair. But you can also walk those dry, too. And they're lightweight.
Good to know. Thank you. Question 14.
What is the best way to purify water?
Well, so here's the best way to handle your water is think about where you're going to get it first. Choose wisely when you pick your water in the wild. If you have a choice of drinking the water out of a ditch on the side of a highway or out of a running creek further away in the woods, I would take the creek. Because the stuff on the side of the highway is going to have chemicals in it and oil and runoff from the asphalt and the trucks. The stuff out in the creek will still have possibly cryptosporidium, giardia, all those different, belly bugs that'll make you sick. So remember, there's two things. First, choose wisely, and then you want to do something called filter and then treat if you have no other choice. Try to filter out the chemicals and then try to treat the pathogens that are in the water. So I can boil pathogens dead, but I can't boil oil. It'll still be there. So if I choose good creek water that's running, then I can just boil it. Boiling takes a container. It takes a lot of energy, making a fire and so on. I would say that's your backup plan, but get a good filter bottle. Now that's something I would spend a couple bucks on. It's not that much. You can get what we call a Sawyer brand mini, and it's got a little pouch. You just fill it up full of water, and then you can drink it right out of there. There's also a bottle that I absolutely love called the Berkey Sport Bottle that's got a filter inside of it, and I can scoop water off the side of the road out of a puddle. Oh, hey, buddy. So this is, I guess you saw him. Here, come say hi. Oh, there you are. Okay. This is Voodoo. Okay. Thanks, buddy. All right, go on. So I like a Berkey Sport Bottle. Yeah, welcome to the life of a celebrity, huh?
Yeah.
The other one's on his way in, I think. But so Voodoo is my pure German Shepherd. He's a good boy. So a good Berkey Sport Bottle, something that I can pick up the water and keep moving. I don't like life straws. Life straws are cheap; they're about $20, but you got to lay down in the water to use them, and they only work that way. Or you can put up a cup of water and do it, but you got to carry a cup around with you and then put your straw in it. Why not get a sport bottle that I can scoop up, screw the filter on the top, and keep moving? Whereas I can also, if I have a filter bottle or pouch or something like that, I can turn it over and squirt the water out, and I can irrigate a wound. I can squirt right? So if I cut myself or I got myself injured, I want to use drinking quality water to clean the dirt and bacteria out of it, right? And if I've got a sport bottle, I can squirt through there and wash all that out. So, here's Saber. Saber, come here. Come say hi to everybody. So up here with the cameras. I don't know if you can see this guy. So this is Saber. He's my Belgian Malinois. They're both working dogs. All right, let's go somewhere. But so remember, there's a rule with gear. It's called 2 is 1 and 1 is none. If I've got 2 of something and 1 breaks, I still have 1. If I've got 1 of something and it breaks, I'm out of luck. So I like to have 2 knives. I like to have 2 ways to make my water drinkable. I like to have 2 of whatever I find to be critical to my survival.
That makes a lot of sense. Your dogs look like they're a couple years old. They look really nice. They're pretty dogs.
Thank you. Yeah, they're about 2 years old.
So question.
Yeah, so Saber's dad was a police attack dog. He could hit you running and knock you down, fly through a car window, whatever he needed to do. Voodoo's dad was another big. He was more of a police work dog.
So they're part of your wilderness survival security plan?
They are. Yeah, they are. Yep.
All right, question number 15.
What are your priorities when you realize you're in a survival situation?
Okay, great question. First of all, stop what you're doing. Stop everything and figure out, am I safe? What's going on? You have to do something that we call size up. Size up the situation. Is where I am right now safe to be? Do I need to hurry up and get out of here to a safer spot? Is there an alien back there?
Kind of looks like
Are
it.
you hiding in that? So the first thing you want to do is stop, take a breath, think about what you're doing, get your mind settled, devise a plan, and then move out. Those are the first things that you want to do.
Very good. Question 16.
How do you find water in the wild?
Well, water in the wild is going to be everywhere. So if I am in Florida, there's water absolutely everywhere. If you ever flew over an airplane, just go on Google Maps and look at the satellite view and look at Florida. You'll see that the whole place looks like it's about to sink in the ocean, that it's full of lakes and ponds and canals. Whereas if I get into the mountains, I don't have as much water laying on the ground because it's all running downhill. So understand the terrain that you're going to be in, and then understand where water collects. So I can collect water out of a pond, a stream. I can dig a hole next to a stream if I want to make sure I get cleaner water. It's called a gypsy well or a coyote well. And just let the hole fill up with water, let all the dirt settle, and then that water will be somewhat filtered. As opposed, that way if I don't have any kind of a filter with me, I can drink that water right out of the ground if I have to. If you know that you're going to be rescued in the next 2, 3, 4 days, I would rather you drink bad water and then get fixed at the hospital later instead of not drinking the water and then dying of dehydration. So there's other places that you can look for water. If you have a trash bag, you can put it over a tree branch with a lot of leaves and close it up and let the sun heat the water out of the leaves. It'll drop into the bag. That's called transpiration. That will get you some water. The Boy Scout solar still that you see all the time, where you dig a hole and you put a poncho down with a rock in the middle and a cup underneath, those don't work all that well. It's a great picture, but they're not as effective. If that's all you had, then I'd say definitely try it. You probably don't want to drink your own urine. That's by the time you get thirsty enough to do that, your urine will be toxic, so you don't want that. So you also do not want to drink salt water because the salt will shut down your kidneys. But what you can do is you can take salt water and then you can boil it and catch the steam, and then you can drink the water that comes back off the condensation. So you can look in trees. Anywhere that you see ants are going back and forth to water. So there might be inside of the knot of a tree, like a little hole. There might be some water sitting in there. There might be some water in different, like if you're in a tropical environment, water sits in those tropical plants down in the base of them. You can cut a banana tree in half and create a bowl and it'll fill with water. So there's water everywhere. You've just got to find a way to locate it. You can even take a t-shirt and wrap it around both ankles and walk through wet grass in the morning and let those t-shirts get all wet and then wring that water out into your mouth. You can also catch water that runs off of a roof. One summer storm can create 6,000 gallons of water coming off of a roof. If you catch water that comes out of the sky that's never touched anything, it's always safe to drink. Unless there's been a nuclear explosion, then it's going to have radiologicals in it. But a good filter can take that out. So you can always drink rainwater. So if you see it's going to rain, take advantage of setting up a tarp to catch all that water and let it run right into your cup. And then you'll have water that way.
Very good. Question 17.
What are ways to catch fish if you don't have like a commercial fishing pole in line?
Great question. So that's another thing about being prepared. Survival is about being resourceful. If you've got parachute cord, is everybody familiar with what parachute cord is, with the little cords inside, the 550 cord? All those little strands inside, you can pull all those out, and you can tie them together and make a fishing string. You can tie that to a stick and make an old school fish pole. You can just tie that string to a hook if you have a hook with you, or You can make a hook out of a stick, and then you can catch slow food, like maybe a frog or a snail or a grub worm, stick it on the hook, tie it to the string, find an old water bottle that's laying around somewhere, tie that as a float, and just let that float out in the water. And when the water bottle jumps, just reel it in from the side. You don't even need a pole. If you take something out called bank line, which is an asphalt tarred, like a string, it's actually made for creating fish nets and stuff. You can make your little, just take a hook or make a hook, put something on the end of it, and tie that to a tree, and tie a whole bunch of those out, and let them sit there floating on water bottles or corks or whatever, and then just sit back in the woods and wait for all the fish to snatch the food, and then just go pull them in. So that, or you can, if you're on a running stream, you can stack all the rocks in such a way that the fish coming down the stream get trapped into a small rock pen. So, or you can turn up rocks and look for crawdads or all kinds of things, or even earthworms along the bank of a creek or river. You can eat those. So think about the slow food first, and then be creative with how you would do it. Look at the professional ways. Look at a fishing pole, how it's made. How could you make one of those in the woods? What would you need to take with you in case you had to do that? Take some fishing line. Take some string. Take some bank line. Take a cork. Take a little Altoids tin and put a few fish hooks, a couple of bullet sinkers in there. And then that way you'll have, with a little wrap of fishing line in there, maybe 20 or 30 feet of that. You can put that in your pocket or in your backpack. And then that way you'll have something to work with. Give yourself options.
All right. So question 18 is our last question. I'll go ahead and ask it. We wanted to know a little bit more about some of your survival books, or what was your first survival situation that you were in?
My first survival situation. I would say the first one that comes to mind when I was about 16. I was out in the woods playing Army with a couple of buddies, and we were running through the woods, and while I was running, I can't remember if I was chasing or running from, but whatever the case was, as I was running through there, I took a cactus needle about this long right into my kneecap. Ouch. And it went under the kneecap, and it got lodged into the joint, and it broke off, leaving only about that much sticking out. And the problem was I fell down, and when I did, we're out in the woods, and I couldn't walk because every time I went to straighten out my knee, it pulled the needle in and out like this.
Ouch.
And it was going under my skin, so I couldn't walk. We had to figure out how. So then we had to immobilize the leg. And here we are, kids, right? We're just playing. We didn't know any better. We had to immobilize the leg. We had to create crutches. We had to figure out how to do a carry to carry people out. So they had to carry me out at that time. So it's a good idea to learn a program that you guys might really like. I recommend and I teach is called. It's a FEMA program called CERT, Community Emergency Response Team. And they have a teen CERT. And they teach you about these carries and basic first aid and all that. It's free, and you get backpacks from the government to carry with survival gear in there, a couple things. So that's something to definitely check into, because that kind of stuff will help you in this kind of situation I'm talking about, because you learn how to carry somebody who's injured. So like in something like that, you can take a door off the hinges and make a backboard. You can use a table and make a backboard. You can use a chair to carry somebody in a sitting position, and two people can carry the chair. Or you can tie some sticks together and make a litter with jackets or T-shirts out in the woods. So those kind of things are what you want to be prepared to know how to do in case one of your buddies gets injured. So we had to do all that and get out of the woods and get to the hospital so that they could pull that needle out of my kneecap and put a drain in it, little tube that let all the pus and stuff come out over the next few weeks. So I would say that's probably the first one I can remember.
That sounds very painful.
It was. And not to mention some 80-year-old doctor who, he's like, I'm sitting on the table, and he says, all right, lift your leg out straight. I says, if I lift my leg straight, it pulls the needle under the skin. So he throws my leg up in the air, slides the table extension out, lets my leg come down, and guess where the needle went?
Right in.
Right up under my kneecap. So now how hard was it to get that thing out of there, right?
Yeah.
So that was a big deal.
Wow.
So thanks, old man.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Charlie, that's all of our questions. Is there anything that you could think of that we didn't ask that we should know?
I will leave you with what I call the 9 areas of survival. So whether you want to be prepared for a disaster, a blizzard, a hurricane, an earthquake, a massive power outage, or whatever a flood, whatever it is, and you can't remember all of the things to do, if you'll remember the 9 areas and just say, do I have something from each of these 9 areas set aside or carrying with me? Then you'll be so much more better off than most of the people that you'll run into. That way you'll be the survivor, you'll be the helper, and not the victim, or waiting for somebody else to come help you. So those 9 areas of survival are food, which you can live for weeks without. It's not as important as you think. The next one is water. You can only live, for a few hours to a day, depending on your climate, without water. Without water, you can't think straight. If you can't think straight, you're impaired. If you're impaired, you don't know you're impaired, and you don't know you're not thinking straight. So you've got to be aware of that, and you got to look for this in all the people that are trying to survive with you. You got to watch each other and be their buddy. So that's food, water. Next thing you need is shelter. Shelter is everything from the clothes on your back to some sort of a tent or a tarp or a survival blanket, a thicker Mylar blanket, or even if you needed to move into some kind of a structure or house or something that you found along the way. So food, water, shelter. Then I have another one that's a double, which is called safety and health. Just because you're in a survival situation doesn't mean that we can act without rules. Rules and safety become far more important. You got to watch out for each other. Don't do things wrong. Make sure you have a boo-boo kit or a first aid kit of some sort with you. Something that can handle deep cuts, something can handle burns, something can handle bee stings, some Band-Aids, some gauze, some blood stoppers, maybe even a tourniquet. You can get some great tourniquets. Don't buy your tourniquets off of Amazon because they come from China and they will break. Unless you get the good ones from like North American Rescue or something like that. You can turn them on to the right ones there, Trevor, I'm sure.
Yep.
So safety and health is your next category. So that's food, water, shelter, safety, health. Security is your next one. Make sure that you keep yourself secure from any threats and hazards. So do you need to have a knife with you? Do you need to have, once you get older, you get into firearms, that'll be another topic. Then you want to start thinking about energy. Do I have energy? If I'm counting on my cell phone, do I have a spare battery with me? Do I have a battery pack to charge my cell phone? If I'm counting on a GPS, do I have a way to charge my GPS if I get lost? Because it will die eventually. So next thing is communication. So do I have a way to call for help? If it's my cell phone, same thing as energy. If it's a ham radio, do I know how to use it? Is it a satellite tracker or what we call a Garmin InReach Mini? That kind of thing works off of satellites. I can text back home, right? Transportation is the next one. Transportation is anything from the shoes on your feet to a vehicle, a bicycle, a wagon, whatever it is. You can use a bicycle to carry 2 heavy backpacks and push the bicycle, and that way you don't have to carry your backpacks. So let wheels work for you. Transportation, and then we start thinking about intelligence. What is the information? What's the intel in my area? What's the weather going to be where I'm going? What are all the questions I need to answer before I go somewhere? Is the area safe? Is the area dangerous? What kind of wild animals are in the area? So stuff like that. So as long as you can address all those different areas, then you'll be in good shape.
That is fantastic stuff, Charlie. We thank you so much for your time. I know you're probably pretty busy, as much stuff you're into, and we will check out your website, the readygoprep.com. Is that it?
Yep.
And then it. Survival Dispatch as well.
Yeah, check out Survival Dispatch. You guys might be really interested in the Dispatch magazine. It's a PDF version, like I said. Just go on there. You can what you can do is go on there and do a free trial. And normally it's $9.95 a month. Go on there and do the free trial and download, some of the issues and have a look at them. And then maybe the school wants to do single subscription. You guys can all just put a database of those together and kind of keep track of what we're doing. Because I also started a new column just this month called The Fort, and it's just for guys like you. It's for younger people that. So, like in December, we did an issue called Germ Warfare, which is all about bacteria and pathogens and medical messes and food cross-contamination and germs. But I also came in there, what I'll do every month is take out a kid section, which is, like a teenager section, and say, okay, here's your mission. Here's what I want you to do. So we did a recipe of foil cooking on a fire in December. In January, we're doing one that's called Go Out and Build a Fort out of a bed sheet or something else. Take a picture, send that picture to us or put it on our Instagram, and we'll send you guys some swag or something from the magazine. So
very cool.
Definitely check that out.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Well, thanks so much, Charlie. We'll go ahead and sign off. We really, again, thanks so much for your time, your experience. Thanks so much for introducing us to your dogs. That was fun to see them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, if you guys ever need me, shoot me a message, and you want to jump on and do a quick video chat or something like that, I'm happy to do it. It doesn't have to be like this. Just give me a shout. Got any questions? You guys want to do any practice or any training or something, and you want some ideas, give me a call.
Awesome.
I'll help you out.
Thanks
All right.
so much, Charlie.
Hey, best of luck, everybody. Be safe out there.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
It's like annoying.
Your hair is perfect.